Welcome to the EmpowHERment Show, a podcast designed to empower women like you to take control of your lives, make informed decisions, and redefine success on your own terms, beyond the noise of influencer culture. Okay, wow. This is the first time we have like 4 people in different locations around the country. I love it. Hi, ladies. I'm super excited to have our guest Martha today, and I'll let her introduce herself and talk a bit about what she does and why we're having her here. But just to set the stage a bit, we're going to be talking about immigration in the United States today. Very timely, very important, and impacts more people than I think we all think. And so Martha is our expert and going to sort of break down some of the common misconceptions and tell you what you all need to know about the state of immigration in the US today. Before we dive in, I'm going to explain how we know each other because I think it's pretty hysterical. So when I first moved to New York City, which was like 3.5 years ago, my then boyfriend at the time, or fiance actually, I think we were recently engaged, we were going to get legally married and go to City Hall because we wanted to kick off the green card process. And I had no idea where to start, did not know how much it would cost, how long it would take, didn't know anything. And I was getting my nails done, probably because I needed to like de-stress from everything going on. And I was sitting next to Martha, and I heard her on the phone with a client or somebody, and she was clearly talking about immigration. And it sounded like a very stressful conversation. I was like, oh shit, what am I getting into? But she seemed really cool and she had amazing advice. And so when she got off the phone, the theme of my life is obviously that I shoot my shot. And so I just nudged her and I'm like, you don't happen to be an immigration lawyer, do you? And she told me she was, and we started chatting and I explained to her how Nathan and I needed to kind of figure out our stuff. And yeah, we hired her and we worked with her and we got a green card for my husband. Thank God, especially because we did it before the administration change, which we'll get into. But yeah, that's how we met. It was like one of the most like kismet New York moments. And that was when I actually felt like a true New Yorker, like meeting my immigration lawyer at a nail salon in the West Village. So yeah, Martha, so happy to have you here today. Why don't you tell everybody a bit about what you do, how you got into your line of work, and it'd also be really helpful just to sort of get your perspective on like the state of play right now with U.S. immigration.
Okay, well, thank you guys for having me on. I'm honored. I've listened to all the episodes and I feel like I know you girls already. Well, my name is Martha Rodriguez. I started my law firm, MMR Law Group, almost 5 years ago. Previously, I was working at Kurzban Sedselli & Pratt, a preeminent law firm ran by Ira Kurzban, who is, I like to say he's the Beyonce of immigration law. He really is the GOAT. He's the Serena Williams. He's everything. And well, a little background on me. I'm Cuban Jew. I came to the US on a raft. My dad built a raft to get us out, and we were caught the first time. He was sent back to Cuba. He was sent to prison for 2 years because in Cuba, it's illegal to try to leave the country, not try to enter like it is here. And
Wow.
The second time, he bought a raft and we were picked up by the Coast Guard, the U.S. Coast Guard, and sent to Guantanamo Bay. And then thanks to the Wet Foot, Dry Foot Act from the Clinton administration, we were then brought to the U.S. So when I went to law school, I wish I could say I went with a passion and knowing I was going to do immigration law because that's where my life was leading me. But I really just went because my parents were like, well, you could be a doctor or a lawyer. So options. And that's really bad.
I think that's a common theme with immigrant families. I feel like a lot of people get pressured into doing either of those jobs.
I will say
it's kind of like those are kind of the options I gave my daughter, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, they expanded to accountant as well because my sister went into accounting, and I think she now wishes she had chosen another because I think accounting is probably worse than both, but no offense to any accountants out there. And after law school, I worked at Airbnb, setting up Cuba. So the plan was to have 1,000 properties on the site before they launched Cuba. So I went back to Cuba, much to my parents' chagrin. They did not love the idea of me being in Cuba under false pretenses because no one at Airbnb wanted anyone to know that they were launching Cuba. So I was there on vacation for months at a time. And then I bounced around other startups, and it was actually, I got hit by a car, and I was like, okay, I can't travel anymore. I need to like just hone in on like a law firm job with a desk and healthcare and 401k and the whole thing. And the first law firm that hired me was an immigration law firm. And then I was lucky enough to meet Mr. Eric Kurzban. I went to work there, and we're here now.
Okay. Wow. Quite the journey.
Yeah.
How old were you both times your dad built the raft for you guys to come to the US?
So the first time I was 2 years old, and then 2 years later, because he was sent back and he was in prison, we were under house arrest. And my sister's only
Okay.
11 months older than me, so it's two kids under 5, and my mom alone under house. It's just thinking about it now. Seeing my sister is a mom now. She has my niece and nephew. They're beautiful children, and just
Yeah.
seeing how she's handling with two kids and like a community. I'm just thinking like my
Mhm.
mother's, because my grandmother was already in the US, and my grandfather was arrested as well, because when we all got arrested, the men were sent to prison and the women were left on house arrest. So mind blowing now to think about, you know.
Yeah. That's crazy. Wow. So you were young.
Yeah, and then the
Yeah, and your
second time
sister
we
was
were 4. So I got to the
young.
US I was born in December, so like around September of my turning 4 years old.
Yeah. Okay. That is crazy. Wow. Well, I'm so glad you made it here and you're making the impact you are
Thank you
in the line
guys.
of work you are. It's really, really incredible. I mean, when I think about my husband and me, so we were so lucky with our immigration experience. We applied in like June of 2023, I want to
Hmm.
say, Martha.
Right.
And no, we got married June 2023. Adama was our witness, June 27th that year. We applied like 3 months later because you have to get like all this paperwork together. You have to get all kinds of like lab work done in my husband's case. Like they're making sure you're not bringing like any sickness or disease to the US and that you're like healthy. There were a bunch of like financial documents we had to gather. It was a whole thing, and it was so much more intensive than I ever anticipated. And Martha was awesome because she like just every step of the way, and like we'd be texting, and it was like such a I felt like you were my friend more than you were my lawyer because I'd be like bitching about the process to you, and you'd be like, I get it, girl, like this sucks. And it was just so nice to have somebody like you
It's
throughout
such
that.
I think half my job is managing expectations for clients, because sometimes
Yeah.
I feel like I usually send an email with like, here's like a complete list of every possible piece of evidence you could give me. You know, the top of the list is necessary, the bottom, like if you have it, great. If you don't, move on to the, and some clients will say, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. So some clients you kind of have to like piecemeal that list to, and then other clients will be like, well, why didn't you give me the whole list from the beginning? So it's,
Wow. So you're like therapist too.
yeah, I kind of think when I retire, I'll become a therapist. I'll get
I
like,
feel like I would be both of those clients. Like my anxiety needs the whole list,
yeah.
but I'm not going to retain my ADD won't retain it, so I'm still going to need you to like slow drip it
Hmm.
to me.
Right.
So
So
just
true.
if and when I bring home a husband from another country, like just know that's how we're going to have to
Yeah,
operate.
Okay.
you know who to call.
Yeah.
Yeah, we still have to talk about that. These two plan to go to Ireland or somewhere to go find their
Oh,
husbands. So yeah,
Definitely
they'll be
Ireland.
calling you down the road. We talked about that on a past episode.
We're certainly not
Um,
doing it here in the US. I mean, come on.
yeah, yeah. But morning. So yeah, like the process we had, it
Future
was
client alert.
yeah.
well, I also say my husband's French, so we can
Oh
like
my God, I didn't
totally
know
hate
that.
on all
Oh,
the
we
American
love
men.
France.
Yeah,
We love
maybe we need
France.
to do a
We're
trip to
going to the
France.
Adama and I are going to the Bordeaux region soon. We
Ooh.
might just find one there.
Have to keep our
Okay,
eyes open.
one, really mad I wasn't invited. We'll come back to that. But two, anyway, continuing on with yeah, so Nathan and I, like the process was so seamless, like when we look back at it, because from the time we applied in like September, October of 2023, we got the green card the week we got back from our wedding in June, our wedding in Mini Moon in June 2024.
That's
So we've had,
wild. I have
yeah,
friends who it's taken 10 years to get green
yeah.
cards.
They're
So
very
Martha,
lucky.
I would love for you to explain why you think we were lucky, because I have my, reasons or guesses, but I think like it'd be helpful to sort of like dispel some notions people have about like how long or short these processes could take.
And how much they cost.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll start with the cost for USCIS filing fees. They change periodically, but currently, for when you're filing for a green card, you're having or a green card via marriage or an adjustment of status via marriage. You're filing two forms. The first is the I-130, which is the family petition. So that's a form that Maddie would fill out with her information, petitioning for her spouse. And in that petition, we have to prove that that's her spouse and that she can apply. And the next form would be the adjustment of status, which is what Nathan would file. And that's where he would write out, okay, this is my entire travel history, marriage history, background history, addresses, school. And that's where,
like life story.
right. So those two forms have different fees. One's I think right now it's like 1,140, and the other one's at 530, if I'm not mistaken, but I can confirm that. And the next form would be the I-864, which is Maddie sharing all her financial records. And the I-864 is there to, and this is kind of the form where people get a little spooked, because the form basically says you're sponsoring this person for the next 10 years or until they become a U.S. citizen. So I always like to send my clients not just a form, but just like a simple Word document that they have to sign where it says, this is what this form says. Just make sure you understand, because then I'll get the calls later like, does that form mean what? I'm like, yes, that is exactly what it means.
Yeah.
And
you're
then,
basically assuming responsibility for that person.
Well, what happens if you get divorced though?
You're still responsible for that person for the next 10 years or until they become a U.S. citizen. And I have gotten calls from women who are, we got married, I got him the green card, and now he left me. Apparently he had a wife in Dominican Republic and he just wanted to marry me. And, it's unfortunate, but sometimes it happens. I do not take on those cases because
wait, hold on. No, for a friend, I need to know, like, so if hypothetically I bring home an Irishman and marry him here and petition for him, and then
And then he runs off with me.
How dare you? How dare you? How dare you?
Trying to get your money, Sam.
What does responsible for mean?
Okay, so that's a great question. Basically, you are financially responsible for this person for the next 10 years. And what does that look like in real life? To be quite honest, in the entire time I've been practicing, I've never seen a credit card company call a client and say, hey, this guy opened up a credit card and now you owe. That's really not what it means. And I don't believe that credit card companies, and Maddie would know better, have access to USCIS forms to know if that person got here through a marriage or not.
Credit card company wouldn't, but the bank probably would.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
I just feel like this just blew a hole in my whole theory.
They just might not pursue it.
Right.
Because I can see that not being the most fruitful line of
low ROI.
So how it really shows up today, and I think the Trump administration did this during the first go around, is that if somebody doesn't look like they can support, if they just don't want people to come to US and then get food stamps or get Medicare, Medicaid, or get financial like cash assistance. So it's a way to kind of weed out of like who is not going to be applying for these benefits. And if they think and previously, and by the way, there is a minimum amount that you have to make to sponsor somebody. And that amount goes up by your household size. So I live now in Miami, big Cuban Hispanic community, and a lot of times we live with a lot of our families. It'll be abuela, abuelo, aunts and uncles. So sometimes I say, well, like, how big is it? Oh, it's just me and my wife alone. No one else is filing their taxes under that address, because the amount will increase by household size. So they just want to make sure that if that person does go and request, like food assistance or cash assistance, then what we saw during the first administration is that then they'll come to you and say, you got to refund what the assistance this person requested. But I've only ever seen it done during that. I mean, to be fair, I've only worked during the Trump administration and then Biden, now Trump again. But I've only ever seen it done that during that. I've never seen it. And also they had a specific form for that as well, which we don't have anymore because I did not sign up to be an accountant. So it was a lot of accounting.
You can subcontract to your sister though.
Yeah.
Um, so as a woman of means, I would have better luck going through this process for a variety of reasons, including that one, than someone who fell in love with someone out of the country and did not sort of meet the requirements on paper to be able to financially sponsor them.
Right. So if you cannot financially sponsor on your own, you can have a co-sponsor. So I have
Oh my God, this is like getting a car.
Yeah.
Literally.
And
Can you imagine going to your mom, Sam, and being like, "Hey guys,
You always
it
wanted me to
happens
marry
a
an
lot
Irish
more than
man.
you think. And that's when I
Right,
start
like,
getting the calls
Mom,
from the
he's even
family
Catholic.
members. Yeah. And that's when I have to talk to
Wild,
dad about,
wild.
well, you could get a prenup, but it is a federal law. So the prenup's not going to stand up against a federal, form.
That was wild because yeah, like a lot of people, my husband and I got married like pretty quickly. Like I think 15 months after we like started dating, we were married. And a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, like are you sure? Like are you considering a prenup?" And like, they obviously knew that we were going to be doing the whole like green card deal and like I think we're one of the few stories now where it's like no, like we literally just like were in love and like wanted to get married and like
I think I also told
that's
you
our
to get
story.
prenup.
Yeah, you definitely did. Everybody
I'm
was
sure you
telling me to get a
did."
prenup. And you know what? We can do a whole episode on prenups at some point. And
There's also post-nups, so I mean, your
Yeah.
shot's not over.
Nathan's in the other room. I hope he can't hear this. Anyway, so going back, yeah, with our case, so Martha, we talked about like means and like luckily, yes, I was in a position where, okay, I'm assuming responsibility for this man. What are some of the other factors that you think went into our case being processed so quickly?
Well, I think timing was a big deal. Getting it in before the shift in administration, the Biden administration had a great policy where if cases look good, there was no interview. Whereas now every case has an interview. I have currently a case with a couple who have a baby and they're having an interview to confirm that they have a genuine marriage and relationship. I don't know how much more
Wild.
genuine you get than a baby, but you know what? We are getting interviews
Well,
for those.
Elon
Yeah.
has a lot of them. So.
Right. What do you think is
Anyway,
the cutoff for genuine babies? Like 14? After the 14, it's like,
God, maybe even more. Anyway, yeah. So timing wise, like that was one of
timing
the
was
reasons
great.
that we
I think you
file.
guys had a very straightforward application. There was no previous marriages, no children, no arrests.
Yeah.
They
That we know of.
qualified financially. And yeah, I mean, I filed.
It checked out.
Yeah, I filed 3 applications, probably like in the same time frame. It was you and 2 other couples. You and one other couple got very quick responses, very quick temporary green cards. I should also note, if you're married less than 2 years, you don't get a permanent lawful residency. You get temporary lawful residency. And then the third couple, that was a situation out of my control because we sent everything. And they failed to mention that she owed the IRS money. So when we're filing the tax transcript, I think she makes great money. We're good.
Yeah.
And then we got an RFE, which is a request for evidence. So USCIS, you typically will send a request for evidence. That's a form they send you saying, hey, we've got your application, but we're requesting further evidence on these subjects. So I'm reading this request for evidence. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. She makes money. And I'm like, and I told the client, you know what? Sometimes this happens. Sometimes the officers don't read. I'm going to just highlight it again. She makes. And then at that point, they had a meeting with me and she explained that she owed the IRS a lot of money and hadn't been paying it. And so they got denied. But we're refiling and now she has a CPA. We're going to make a payment plan with the IRS. But yeah, you guys were like,
Okay.
I think it was just
That's
like
gonna
kismet.
complicate
It was like
things.
everything was like checking all the boxes and great time.
Yeah. Do you think that the fact that he's from New Zealand played into it?
I think so. So it's, they would never say that. And I don't think, and there's also no quota for like how many people from each country can come via marriage adjustment of status. Whereas, with other visas, there are like a business visa, H-1 visa, or certain quotas for countries. Um,
Okay.
but I think there's the couple who have a baby. He's Haitian. She's a American Mexican, and we haven't heard back. We went to the interview and it's been a month, and I'm like, what's taking so long? Whereas I went to another interview, French man, American girl. Right after the interview, like weeks later, we got the green card. So
No,
I definitely see maybe more of
Some
a,
disparities.
yeah, with
Yeah.
yeah, especially Hispanic
I
women, when it's like a
We
Hispanic
will,
woman and
yeah.
Hispanic man, or Hispanic woman and a white man, it definitely takes a little more convincing, unfortunately.
got
We'll
it.
let our listeners draw their own deductions from this
Exactly.
as to what might in the world be happening.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've talked about the path for like a marriage green card and, some things that people should know. We talked when we were prepping, Martha, you explained that there's three buckets of immigration or types. Can you explain? We talked a bit about like my case just now, but can you talk about those three types? Because I didn't realize like that has implications for the processes across these various immigration paths.
Right. So Maddie's case would fall under family immigration. So a family member petitioning for another family member, and that could also be fiance visas, children, mothers, fathers, etc. And the other bucket would be business immigration. So that would be professionals coming over either on an O1, H1B, investor visa. So people that are investing lots of money to the US and putting that money towards specific projects are going to get them certain visas. And now, as Trump has so generously let us know, we're going to have the gold card. So that's exciting. And then the third,
How much does that cost, by the way?
I think he said it was 5 million, right?
5 million.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
he's saying.
Can I find a gold card husband?
There's already real estate agents in New York advertising that golden visa.
Yeah.
Like,
Really?
yeah, I saw several in the ad, like on my taxi on the way home from JFK the other day.
That is the most New York thing I've ever heard.
On, there's no details even for it.
Yeah,
Real estate agents
that's
are
what
like,
I'm looking up to see because currently there's another investment plan where it's like a $2 million you got to invest into some project that the U.S. deems reasonable. Um, so I kind of wonder what the difference between the two are going to be, because if I can get a green card for two,
Yeah.
why would I pay five? And
Right.
well, and especially if it's an investment, right?
right.
Yeah.
Like whether I make
You know
money.
how
if I've
many
got that
crypto
kind of-
bros are going to take advantage of that $2 million project? Just like create
Right.
some random coin and call it
Because
good.
if I've got money, it doesn't matter if I win it or lose it.
Right.
Yeah, when
Right.
I worked at
Yeah.
Cruisman, we saw a lot of ski resorts being built, and a lot of Chinese folks coming in and investing their money into these ski resorts. And yeah,
It makes
it's an
sense.
interesting,
A lot of wineries in California.
Right.
A lot of wineries.
Good point, Sam.
and then
What about the
asylum?
the last one?
Yeah,
is-
so that would be asylum, refugee, more of what you see on the news, I think. And that's really,
yeah.
what I like to work on. It's definitely a little more stressful, but I think I have the greater impact. Don't get me wrong, I love a Maddie case. If I can just sit at home and file some paperwork and send it and like be done in a few months, it's fantastic. We love the Maddie cases, but asylum work, refugee, humanitarian, paroles, that's really what I enjoy doing. Those cases can take upwards of 3-4 years. The Trump administration is trying to cut down that time by basically ripping through due process rights that all immigrants, all people have, according to our Constitution. But yeah, they take a little more time. It's a little more, you need a little more, I wouldn't say experience, just because you're dealing with a lot more people. So you have to understand what each judge is like. You want to understand each judge likes things different ways. Each judge has, I mean, there's a way to do it, but some judges will say, no, I need it like a motion before you ask me in court. And some judges are like, oh, you could do an oral motion, no problem. And, so I think it takes a little more like actually swimming in the waters to get used to.
Yeah. Do you find that for those cases you're working, or just for asylum seekers in general, are people trying to do this on their own, or are they hiring
So,
lawyers, and like, what are the benefits of having a lawyer?
right. So what I find is a lot of people will hire notaries or as we call them in the biz, notarios or paralegals who will say, I work at I know how to fill out the form. I'll fill it out for you. But a notary can't go with you to court. So then when they go to court and the judges have caught on to this, they can recognize when obviously this person doesn't speak English, but this is filled out in English and you're telling me you filled it out yourself. Doesn't make sense. So who filled it out? And so now what judges are doing is that they're cutting off people's clocks. So once you file for asylum, your clock starts running. And once you arrive to 150 days, you can apply for a work permit. So what judges are doing is that they're pausing these clocks because they're saying, until you come to me with an attorney, I'm stopping the clock. And that's at their discretion. I don't personally think that's fair because people, if he does want to represent or she does want to represent themselves in court, and I've heard from people that do it, obviously it doesn't end well, but it's their prerogative. But yeah, the big issue now is notarios, and they'll out these forms. People don't know what they're signing. People normally in the Hispanic community, because a notary in a Latin American countries is like an attorney. So people think they paid an attorney. People think they've hired counsel, and then counsel is like, oh, I'm not going with you to court. You're on your own. And so that's the big issue we're finding, not just me, like everyone all over the US. And then, no, I think it's rare that people represent themselves. I think the moment, because for an asylum case, you have two what's called master hearings, and then you have the final merits hearing. And at the two master hearings, I think people get pretty spooked and understand, oh, this is real. It's a courthouse. There's a judge.
Yeah.
They're deporting people.
Proceeding.
So usually I'll get clients who are like, well, I already filed my asylum, but now I went in front of a judge and now I need an attorney. So then we'll take their asylum, and then what we find is that these notarials will fill it out with either incorrect information or just very thin applications, which before used to be fine. You know what? You pay someone, you like get your application in as quick as possible to start your clock. But now the Trump administration has said that judges can rule out immediately without a hearing any asylum applications that don't seem up to buff, right? So, and without a hearing, so people who have filed with notarials, I'd urge them to review their applications, to supplement them, to find counsel if they can, and get that going, because I already started I received a notice, which then I was told was just a like, like an email they're sending out to everyone. But I got so spooked because I got this notice saying filing a frivolous asylum is illegal, and they're going to start going after attorneys as well. So the Trump administration also wants to go after immigration attorneys specifically because the presidential note he wrote is that immigration attorneys are vexatious and aiding illegals. So I'm basically a co-conspirator in an illegal plan. And I just want to make clear that it really bothers me when they keep saying these people are illegal. Filing for asylum in this country is a legal pathway to legal status. If you file for asylum or withholding or any variation, it's no different from someone coming on a tourist visa, maybe being out of status, and then trying to adjust status via marriage. Because they're out of status right now, does that mean that they're not in process to obtain a new status? Entering illegally is not illegal if they request asylum within a year. They only have 1 year to request asylum. And if they go over that year, they can apply for withholding, which means we are fearful of returning to our country, which is actually what this young man in El Salvador had, a withholding case that was approved, Mr. Kilmar. So I just want to make that clear. These people, I mean, sure, are there people here that have entered illegally that have not sought to adjust their status? Yes. But the great majority of these people have some type of case. There's over 4 million asylum cases currently pending. And, you know, that's a pretty substantial number.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why do you think, Martha? So we're at this, crazy juncture in America right now where the political climate is incredibly charged, it's incredibly contentious, and frankly concerning. Why do you think we as Americans, and I'm saying collective we because we're all Americans, like why do we have this very hostile stance towards immigrants right now? Like I don't really understand where that's coming from.
I think the Trump administration has made it very clear it's an us versus them polemic. I think they find that as a very easy scapegoat for a lot of the issues that they're seeing and, fighting past administrations on their easy stance on immigration. But I think this is a long time coming. I think the immigrant class in this country has advanced a lot. I think I have people that are in asylum cases today, currently working and, waiting for a judge to hear their case, who are buying houses, they're buying cars, they're opening up businesses. And I think for someone who is a maybe born American, with a specific ideology, I think it ruffles feathers and then I think they can't possibly imagine that these people are buying houses, opening up businesses and really creating a life, paying taxes and creating a life for themselves, like on the up and up, because how could this group of people do it? And maybe they find it difficult to do. And I think then you have the Trump administration coming in, like spreading lies that, well, they bought those houses with money we're giving them. I mean, do you know how many times I've seen those videos of like, we're buying houses for them? I'm like, where do you see that? And where do I sign up? Like,
Right. It's like, it's the othering that's really scary to me because even, the comments that were recently made by our health secretary around autistic people and their inability to play baseball or write a poem or pay taxes or whatever, like just the fact that the collective we are now creating these alternative classes of people in our rhetoric is so scary to me.
Well, and it's a global issue because we're seeing it all over the place. Obviously, with Brexit, Germany is having their own issues. France can't seem to get past this. Italy has had issues around immigrants. So I mean, it's definitely
nationalism.
Yeah, it's definitely a global issue that we're seeing. I'd like to ask a question about citizenship. There's a lot in the press right now, they're talking about how the Supreme Court has been asked to look at birthright citizenship. There's been conversations about denaturalizing people. Can you talk a little bit about like how we are citizens? Like, you're a citizen, I was born here, so I'm a citizen in a different way than you were. And when God willing, inshallah, when he eventually gets his citizenship, Nathan will be naturalized in a similar way to you. But there's lots of different ways. And I actually think a later question, you mentioned wet foot, dry foot. If you could talk a little bit about that, because it's a very special case and a very special kind of, type of law around that. And so there's just really a lot of different ways to become citizens, but that seems to all be under attack right now.
Okay, so I'll start off by saying that my husband's actually an anchor baby. His family came to the US when his mom was 8 months pregnant, just so he could be born here and get citizenship. And so he would be the prime person that they'd be coming after, right? Someone who both parents had no citizenship or residency, and they came in to have a baby and obtain that passport. But to your point, there are several ways to become citizen. So you have born citizen, you have naturalization, You have adoption. You have people like Ted Cruz, whose parents were American, but he was born abroad. So they would have to adjust his status once he entered the US. I mean, I think those are the main ones, but I think to what you're getting is the process of becoming a citizen. First, you have to be a resident unless you're born here. So I think there's many ways to get to residency. You can get married, have a family petition for you, go through, if you have a business visa, like an H-1B, that then you can get a perm and adjust status to residency. You can get residency through a U visa or a T visa. A U visa is for people who've been attacked in the United States, and a T visa is for someone who's been brought here illegally, like human trafficking. Obviously, if you win an asylum case, you can then be put on a list and adjust status to resident. And unfortunately, if you win a withholding case, or CAT, which is Convention Against Torture, if you're fearful of returning to your country, you can stay, but you cannot become a resident just via that status. So just to tie this back in with what is happening with Mr. Kilmar, he won his withholding case and he was married to a U.S. citizen, so he was allowed to legally stay. I think the big question is, why didn't he adjust, given that he's married to a U.S. citizen?
Yeah. And can you talk about what the goal of the Trump administration would be with, asking for a ruling on birthright citizenship and that kind of thing? Because that seems relatively scary.
What they want to do is that they want to make sure that all the immigrant class, Latin American immigrant class that's coming in today is not coming here, having children. Those children are gaining citizenship, and then they can petition for their parents. If they're deported, or if they stay, then you can petition. And I currently have a case like that, where it's a woman who came here many years ago, nearly 15 years ago. The daughter is turning, maybe 23 years ago. The daughter is turning 21, and now the daughter can petition for her mother. So I think that's their fear. I mean, again, this is all what I believe. I don't think they've come out and said quite, because if you really just wanted citizens in the US, why do you care how they become citizens? Aren't citizens just citizens, right?
Right.
But I think by creating these dividers, they're making it clear that no, they only want citizens that look like them. And I think for them, it means people that have at least, and they haven't come out with clear rubric, but I have to imagine it would be kind of like the French system, where one parent has to have citizenship, or maybe they're going to say residency to actually create citizenship.
Well, the most malicious type of policy is the type that you leave very, very vague so that you can then adjudicate it, case by case.
Right. But then you see people like, Marco Rubio, who had parents who came here illegally, and I don't know how he goes to sleep every night. I do not know how. I don't know if his parents still speak to him. But you know what? I've tried so hard to try to understand the mentality of it within, specifically the Cuban community. But you'd be surprised how many Cuban, especially now in Miami, Cuban legislators in Doral and Hialeah, which are predominantly immigrant communities, are now working with ICE to have their constituents, these immigrants,
raided,
detained. So and this news is coming hard and fast. So every day I'm like, these people were immigrants. These people came and adjusted and went through the same process, but now they want to shut the door behind them. And for the life of me, I can't figure out the why. I think it's like they want to be part of the winning team. They want to I think it's politics. I think it's money. I think it's a lot of money. I have a client that we're currently looking for a presidential pardon. And let me tell you, hearing about the pricing on what a presidential pardon costs, it's definitely money.
There's a whole conversation to be had, I think, about immigrants, proximity to whiteness, and what that looks like, and why there is sometimes such an effort. Because look, it's not just in the Latino community. It happen. I'm Nigerian. It happens in the African community. There are very much people who are very, very wealthy and come with the same goal, to your point, to come have children here so that you get the American citizenship. And there are very, very wealthy people who do that too. And that doesn't seem to be what's at issue here.
Yeah. Well, and we have, in California, we definitely have folks in the political community here in government who I've spoken to who have said, I got deported. I had to go through the process. It took me forever. I had to bootstrap my way through it. And, therefore, I don't support other people just getting all this stuff. So it's almost like similar to, I think we've had this conversation in the past, and I'm sure we will more in the future, about even how women treat each other in workplaces. It's this like sense that I had to work hard and I suffered, and therefore, even though you're like me, you also have to suffer. It's almost this sort of like internalized trauma that is being projected on other people, that is very, very real, and kind of a byproduct, I think, of just the trauma that people face trying to go through America's immigration system.
It's also interesting when a friend and I were in Ireland not too long ago, and we were talking to some policymakers about immigration, and they were like, yeah, we're not like these other countries. We actually really love immigrants because we don't have enough of our own people, and immigrants are great for swelling the ranks, which, by the way, is why America was so open to immigrants for so many years.
Totally.
Because there weren't enough Americans.
We were literally founded
Americans.
by immigrants trying to escape. Yeah. It's crazy to me how we have forgotten, our beginnings as a country.
So the name escapes me right now. I can look it up for you guys later. But actually, during the Clinton administration, they did a committee to look into immigration and what was the issue, how they can make it better. And they kind of came out with saying that we have too many, and it's not that we have too many immigrants, but we have too many immigrants and like not enough. Basically doing jobs that blue collar Americans were doing. So there's not enough blue collar jobs for these Americans because now these immigrants are taking these spots. And this is during the Clinton administration. So I think two things to that. I think one, technology plays a huge part in the immigrant experience. I think as technology has improved, a lot of middle class and Americans who maybe didn't go to college are not getting these white collar jobs. They're feeling a little more threatened by the surge of immigrants coming in, rightfully or wrongfully. I don't think they do half those jobs anyways for the pays that, but I think also the immigrants themselves have access to technology now. So they're more aware, they're more informed. And I think like that's something that I hear all the time when people go, well, now they come and they just know everything. It's like, well, would you preferred it when they came in like blind and deaf and, we're not knowing where to go, what to do, how to advocate for themselves. Like to your point about I had to suffer and now they have a cell phone and they know where everything is. And so I think both things.
Well, and then what's the reverse, right? Because I feel like so many of those same people would complain when folks come over and don't speak English and don't understand the customs and don't understand the process
or didn't want to get a job.
Oh yeah, I had a judge deny bond just the other day because my client has had a job. He's like, well, I just no criminal record. Oh, but I don't understand. Like he's had a job, so like why hasn't he gotten it together? I'm like, well, he's applied for asylum and we're within a year. So what do you mean? He's like, well, he took like 8 months to apply. And I'm like, he's allowed to apply within a year. Like if Congress didn't want to, if Congress said 8 months, it would have been 8 months, but it said a year. I'm still kind of reeling from that.
Like he just wasn't keen enough? Like what is the issue?
He has a job. Yeah. He applied and he was just trying to pick at everything. And so this is also where like you start realizing that when the Trump administration is hiring federal judges and immigration judges, at record speeds, this is why, because you're getting this kind of...
These are Heritage Foundation judges.
Excuse me?
Yeah. These are Heritage Foundation judges.
Right.
They're people who've been very vocal about these issues for the past 30 years, except these judges are like 30 years old.
Right.
Right.
Well,
We're
I
living
think
in
we're
crazy
coming to the
times.
end.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on and on and on this topic, but Martha, something that we always try to leave our listeners with when we bring on guests, especially experts like you, is, 2 to 3 pieces of advice that will empower our listeners. We're obviously here to help women, but really anybody listening to this, I'm sure, will benefit from this conversation. So for women, I'd love to hear from you in particular, what are some resources or, tips you would give if they're experiencing or about to experience the immigration process?
So for my female clients who are maybe considering a fiance visa, as in maybe they're coming in as a fiance, I always say there's a better way. I don't like putting women in a position where they're in a fiance visa because it leaves them very vulnerable. So if we can get them on a tourist visa or some other type, and then they can adjust status while here, I prefer that. Because if they come on a fiance visa and it doesn't work, you only have 90 days to get married. If it doesn't work out and you don't get married, there's no like waiver, there's no forgiving that. You have to go back. And then good luck coming back in. So I always kind of sway women against a fiance visa. I tell all your listeners that I don't think calling your congressperson is passe. I think it does work. I don't think we're yet at the brink of total corruption. I think
We haven't collapsed
yeah,
that far.
I
Yeah.
think that they
Yeah, and Marta, like I get those requests often from clients, like for personal and professional matters. Like, can you connect me to someone, in Congress or my Congress member on this issue?
Yeah.
Like that's a really regular request.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. Like Maddie, I grew up Cuban and Republican, so not Cuban, but Republican. And I
Yeah,
used
I was
to,
going to say, my friend. But yes, the other one, yeah.
and I used to intern for Congresswoman Ilana Russ-Latinen, who is incredible. And she actually retired when Trump came into office because that's a different flavor of Republican. I used to receive those calls when I was interning, and I used to see what a difference they make, and I still believe they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for anyone else going through an immigration process, just be patient. I'm surprised constantly by people's perception of how long the process takes. And constantly people be like, well, it's been 3 months. Like, what do you mean? Like, oh, my friend.
Talk a lot.
Because it usually takes about, I want to say 2 to 3 months for you to get all your paperwork together, get all of it to your attorney, have them prepare everything. It should take about, I think clients usually take about 2 months to get everything together. I take about 1 month to put it together into this huge, beautiful packet. And then after that, you want to look on the USCIS processing page. They have a website where you can check processing times. And I would just tell people, like, keep checking that processing time, because even though it looks like a really high number, that number goes up and down. It doesn't just go up. So if you're past the processing time, then and you caught it and you can screenshot it, we can call USCIS and say, hey, I applied at this date. I'm past the processing time. Like, let's get some things going. However, the Trump administration has kind of cut our wings a little by saying that typically what would happen if they pass this processing time, we would then go to the ombudsman, which is an intermediary between attorneys and USCIS, but that entire department is no longer. So now our only recourse is to sue the federal government for them to actually take a look at your case and have cases that are like years past the processing time. But now the Trump administration says that any vexatious attorney who dares file a lawsuit against the federal government, they're going to come sue you.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
but look at the processing time. Keep calling USCIS. Keep letting them know you're past the processing time, because I definitely think those calls matter. I would also suggest if you're calling USCIS, you ask to speak to a tier 2 officer, the person you're usually speaking to when you first call. They're looking at the same screen you and I are looking at. You want to say, no, I need a tier 2 officer. They're going to call you back within 30 days. Sometimes they don't. So you got to call back in 30 days and say, I haven't heard from the tier 2 officer. But the tier 2 officer should have a lot more information than the USCIS officer who you're just getting on the phone.
Got it. Wow. And I mean, you are so spot on because, yeah, it took like roughly 2 to 3 months between the time we got married, got all of our paperwork together, and filed and had all your tremendous support with that. And we were lucky that it was processed quickly, but you made it very easy. So, my tip, listeners, is hire Martha or another lawyer, but she's pretty great. Yeah, and then, just thank you for coming on. I think this was really, really helpful. I learned a lot. I know our listeners will too. And so appreciate what you're doing because it's not easy work, but it's so important.
Well, thank you guys. I love talking to you all, and I kind of want to stay friends. Can we just make like
Wanna
a
come again?
WhatsApp group
Yes,
chat?
of course. No, we gotta get on social.
Yeah.
We'll all social, and and sometime we'll talk, and I won't be in construction clothes.
And maybe I get invited
So
on one of these trips to Bordeaux or
there'll be news to come on that.
okay.
Yes.
That's forthcoming. We're plotting on that.
We've got plans. Yes, little teaser there. Anyway, all right. Thanks for joining. All right,
you, guys.
everybody, be sure to subscribe and follow, and we'll share some resources out from the conversation today. Have
Awesome.
a good one.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.